and therefore gravity is a very weak force. One thing I noticed about 4 months after I finished this calculation was that the energy of a graviton was very close to 1/3 the mass of a proton. Again, when you take a proton mass and convert it to energy through Einstein's equation E equals mc squared, you get an energy that the graviton energy is so close to 1/3 the mass of a proton that I then used that energy and plugged it back into my formula. I used a third of a proton, converted it to energy, and plugged it back in here, and came up with a gravitational constant of 6.6807 times 10 to the minus 11th Newton meters squared per kilogram squared. And that just happens to be up in a new modern range. It makes it quite convenient. Some of the evidence that's been found, if you go to fruechtetheory.com and click on the blog there, you will find various items. The energetic gamma ray experiment telescope was up in space in the 90s, and GLASS, Gamma Ray Large Area Space Telescope, is going up this May of 2008. And that will be 30 times more sensitive than EGRET. But what EGRET found in the 1990s was that the moon is glowing very bright in gamma rays, and all the planets are glowing bright in gamma rays as well. In fact, NASA says that the moon is brighter than the sun in gamma rays, and I don't really think that's the case. EGRET had an anti-coincidence shield on it, as GLASS will as well, and if radiation comes in with too high a flux density, the anti-coincidence shield shuts down the instrument. So EGRET looking at the sun was just shut down. And incidentally, looking at the Earth, there are approximately 250,000 times the energy, gravitational energy coming from the Earth with EGRET in orbit around the Earth, traveling at about, well, what do satellites travel at? About 17,000 miles per hour. And so when it looked at the Earth, it saw a glowing rim, but just spotty in the middle. And that was, again, because, I'm saying it's because the anti-coincidence shield was activated. Other things that are explained by the theory are the solar wind, for example. In the solar wind, it's all nuclei and electrons. There are alpha particles, which are helium nuclei. There are free electrons, free protons. A proton is a hydrogen nucleus. And if you think about it, one of the interesting concepts of this is if you have an isolated nucleus, no electrons, let's say you have an alpha particle, which is 2 protons and 2 electrons, it's not pulled by gravity at all. Because if there are no electrons in atomic orbitals, then there is no gravity. And this is shown in the solar wind. The nuclei and the free electrons, they just keep going out past the Earth through the solar system. They are not pulled back toward the sun. Ulysses is a satellite that the European Space Agency and NASA put up around 1990. They used Jupiter as a slingshot to put Ulysses in a north-south orbit around the sun. And one of the things just discovered recently is that Ulysses picked up some of the solar wind that had passed through the tail of Comet McNaught. It was the brightest comet in about 40 years, and it reached apogee around the sun about this time last year. And millions of miles past the comet, they found that the solar wind had slowed down to half its speed. And they also had said that oxygen nuclei had picked up some electrons going through the tail of the comet. And it actually captured electrons, and they found oxygen ions with lower positive valence levels arriving at Ulysses. And they're trying to figure out why it slowed the solar wind down. But and I'm just going by what the Ulysses people say. And the reason I'm saying that would happen is once you pick up electrons in atomic orbitals, the gamma rays, the gravitons coming off the sun that are gamma rays are going to start pulling back on those ions more, and will slow down the solar wind if electrons are picked up and incorporated into atomic orbitals. In conclusion, we are looking at a concept where gravity is the exchange of photon energy between atoms and molecules. And the graviton is released by an electron as it makes a turn and can be absorbed by an electron while in orbit. Not all gravitons are absorbed. Many of them just pass right through masses. But what we have is an electron, once it has absorbed a graviton, upticks in mass, has a greater centrifugal pull by the Coulomb attraction, and as it makes a turn, it will release a graviton again. And this is a unification theory because it unifies gravity and the Coulomb attraction.
For more information on Fruechte's gravity theory, including his abstract and short paper, A Calculated Value of G, the full paper, and his blog, check out fruechtetheory.com.